Welcome! I'm Mia and today I will show you how to create a Kumihimo braid in 6 easy steps. Let's get started with the setup, and these are the things you will need. It is 4 threads in 2 different colors, a Kumihimo disc and an extra piece of thread. First, take 2 pieces of threads of the same color and align them properly, then fold them in half to get the middle point of them. Put the middle point into the eye of your Kumihimo disc and hold it in place with your middle or index finger and your thumb. Now take threads of one side and put them into 2 slots next to each other, where a little cutout triangle should be right in the middle. Straighten the threads across the disc and put them into 2 slots next to each other on the opposite side, so that both cutout triangles are on opposite sides of each other. The 2 threads should go straight through the middle of your Kumihimo disc. Now we will repeat these steps with the second color. Also align them and fold them in half, so that the middle goes into the eye of your Kumihimo disc. Hold them in place with middle index finger and thumb, and also put them in 2 slots next to each other and on the other side as well, so that you will get a cross shape on your disc. You should now have cutout triangles between each of your threads and 3 of them in between of the different colors. With all 4 threads on your disc, it should look like this. Now we will use the little piece of thread. We will need it to hold the threads in place so that we can start braiding. The first end needs to go through the eye, exactly where the 2 threads of different colors meet. Pull it through quite a bit, so it should look like this. Now take the other end and put it through the hole right where 2 colors meet as well, on the opposite side. Pull it through so that it lies on top of the other threads, and it should look like this. Now turn your disc around. Make sure that the threads in the slots are sitting tight and make room for your thread in the middle. Take both ends of the thread and secure it with a single knot. That's all. We just need this thread for the beginning, so we will remove it later. Now turn around your disc again and make sure that all threads are in the places where they should be. It should look like this, with a cross and the knot in the middle. Now your setup is complete and ready for braiding. This is the most simple setup of them all. Of course, you can add more colors. Just add them in pairs and rotate your disc in the direction of the arrows in the middle to make sure that they are all in the correct position for braiding. Also, leave 2 spare slots. Now let's begin with the fun part, the braiding. Place the disc in front of you in that way that the both threads you put on the disc at first are showing from top to bottom. To locate the threads you will use for braiding, you have to look for a little triangle in between of both threads. The one which is next to the triangle is the thread we are going to use. These threads are moved to the dot on the opposite side, which has the same color, like this. For each step there are 2 threads we are moving, so the next one is the lower one. This will go up, also in the slot next to the dot with the same color which the triangle had. In the center you can now see the 2 threads you just moved overlapping the threads in color 2. Now it's time to move on to the next color. You will have to rotate the disc in the direction of the 2 arrows in the middle until you reach the second color. And just like with the previous color, you have to locate the little arrow in between of the two threads. Again, the little arrow indicates the thread we will move next, which again will be in this case the upper left and the lower right one. Move these two threads again to the slot next to the dot in the same color of the arrow, which will be on the lower left, and the upper right side of the threads in the same colors, which you are not moving in this case. As we are rotating clockwise here, we always move the upper left and the lower right thread of our work. If you would use the other side of the disc and rotate counterclockwise, it would be the other way around. Now we rotate our disc again clockwise until we reach our first color again. And just like before, locate the thread you want to move by looking for the little triangle in the middle of the two threads. It doesn't really matter if you start with the upper thread or the lower one. Important is just that you always move both of them. As you have two threads on top and two threads on the bottom, it's pretty easy to mix them up so that you use the wrong thread. This is why the little arrows or triangles in between of the two threads come in handy, because they always show you which is the right thread you have to move. As long as you always move the right threads and rotate into the correct direction, your Kumihimo braid will always look perfect. Also make sure that your work always stays in the middle and your threads are pretty tight, so braiding is much easier. So as you already have guessed by now, the basic pattern is pretty simple. It is moving two threads, one from top to bottom, the other from bottom to top, and rotate until you reach the next color, and then repeat. In the beginning you will do this for about 5 to 10 complete rotations of your disc. That's it. Now let's move on to the next part, which will be the stretching of your work. This is where we will need again the little piece of thread we used in the beginning to secure our braid. Turn your disc around and make room for the little thread in the middle. It is important for this step that all threads are in their slots and properly tight, so that nothing would happen to your braid. Now hold the disc and pull the little thread in the middle a few times until the braid stretches out a little. This step is important so you will get an even pattern. In this example, you can see the stretched part in the end and the non-stretched part in the middle of the eye. You can clearly see that the pattern in the end is more even than in the beginning. As soon as you stretch it, the braid will become a little longer and more even, so you can see now the beginning and the end is all the same. In the next step you will learn how you will always find the correct thread you have to continue with. First, find the threads which are overlapping on top. These were the last two threads you used, so rotate them in a way that they are lying in front of you. Now just simply rotate in the direction of the arrows in the middle until you reach the next threads. Now all you have to do is locate the little triangle in the middle of the two threads and you can continue your work. When your braid is long enough and you no longer need the thread to stretch it out, it's time to remove it. Turn your disc around, simply remove the knot in the middle, and all you have to do now is pull it out. And that's it. Now just keep on braiding and stretching from time to time until you either reach the end of your threads or your braid has the length you wanted it to have. Make sure to have at least 2 inches or 5 centimeters of thread left so you can properly secure the threads in the end. There are many different ways to do that, from a single knot to sewing it together, but in this video I would like to show you my very favorite method for doing that. This brings us now to our very last step, which will be the finishing of your braid. Place the disc in front of you on your desk in a way that the threads you would have used next are lying directly in front of you. Before we are able to remove our work from the disc, we need to secure the threads at first. Here you can see the threads that were used last are showing from left to right. You can indicate that by looking at the overlapping in the middle. Now remove the two threads which would have been used next, which are indicated as always by the little triangle in the middle. Take both ends and make a single knot to secure them. Make a very tight knot to make sure it's really secure, and for a little bit more security we'll do another one with the next threads. So just rotate your disc again until you reach the next color, locate the next threads, and also remove those out of your disc. Then again perform another knot in the middle and make it really tight as well, just like the first one. Now your braid can be removed from the disc. For that, just pull out all the other threads. Bring all the threads to one side so you can easily pull it out. You can pull it out one way or the other, it doesn't really matter. To make the ends completely secure, we will perform a knot and use a little glue. But first, we have to group up our threads. Sort them by color so that you always group two threads with one color together, which means you should have in the end 4 pairs with 2 threads of the same color each. Put them on your desk in a star-like pattern, just like you see it here. Now take the first 2 threads and put them over the next 2 and leave a little loop. Take now the threads below and put them over the next 2 threads. Now take the ones below these and put them over the 2 remaining threads. And the last 2 threads will go through the little loop you left in the beginning, just like shown. Now pull each pair with your fingers, which will cause them to close up. If you did it correctly, it will look like a little square, which will go smaller and smaller the more you pull it. It is important to pull them as tight as possible. For that, take them in your hands like shown and pull them. In the end, you have a little square with 4 colored dots on top, just like you see it here. Now it's time to use the glue. Apply a small amount of glue on each pair of threads where they come out of the little square you just performed. It's best to use a quick drying super glue, but be careful and don't glue yourself to your work. When all threads are covered in glue, just set it aside and wait for the glue to dry. As soon as the glue is completely dry, it's safe to cut off all the threads. Cut them off as close to the little square in the middle as you can. The glue is securing your work, so nothing can rip off. I'm using this method of securing the threads especially for jewelry. This way you have slim ends on both sides, which can easily be glued in a clasp or clamp. And this is it. Now you know everything you need to know to create your very own Kumihimo braids, just like this one. Now you can create your own keychains, lanyards, jewelry, and so much more. Just like I did with this little test piece here. I used a magnetic clasp and glued the both end sides inside. And what I got is this here, this beautiful tiny little ring. Now it's your time to get creative. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and I truly hope to see you in the next one. Bye!